I'm not going to romanticize them and say there'll never be another Kid Dynamite, because you know what? That's the nature of music, and that's the nature of hardcore punk, is that like someone's always pushing it forward. Right now, I'm sure that there's some like band that none of us have ever heard about because they probably don't even have a name yet, and they're practicing in their parents' basement, and they're like 15 years old, who in like, you know, a month from now or 2 years from now may be like, you know, shocking all of us with how incredible they are. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that, you know, like I said, Kid Dynamite were a great band, but I don't think that they were like, well, I don't think when Kid Dynamite died, hardcore punk died, and I would say that about any band. You know, it's like, it's a music and a culture that keeps pushing forward, and you know, I think there's always going to be that next band that like, you know, takes it to the next level. I hope, you know, and I think that's what keeps people involved for so long, is that just when you think you've seen it pushed as far as it can go, you find another band that just like, you know, kind of knocks you on your ass and you get reinvigorated.
This story begins a few years ago. Dave had recently been made office manager at Jade Tree, and one of his first projects was ironically a new Kid Dynamite release, Cheap Shots and Youth Anthems, a collection of demos and covers that we had recorded throughout the years. So, through the process of weeding through dozens of songs, Dave came up with the idea, hey, let's package a DVD with it. So I got started. I came up with 40 minutes of live video and photos, nothing fancy. And I made the deadline. Only one problem. Dave calls me up the day before our trip to West Side, where we're gonna master and sequence the DVD and CD. He tells me, everyone at Jade Tree thinks the DVD is really cool, but they don't want to release it with Cheap Shots. They want to release it on its own. Great. So that left me with 24 hours to come up with a new, shorter DVD to package with Cheap Shots and Youth Anthems. But the bigger task at hand was, how do we take 40 minutes of video and photos, a project that in the beginning was meant to be so small, and turn it into something that people are actually going to want to watch? It took us a few years, but we did it. We decided to call up some friends, have them sit down in front of a camera, and talk about our band. We figured, not only will we tell our story, but our friends will tell theirs.
Where do you want me to start?
Where am I looking? Does it matter?
When we got back after the last Lifetime tour, I started looking for people to play with. I connected with Steve pretty quickly because we had some mutual friends and some mutual enemies. And he was a bass player and he had kind of a similar idea of things that he wanted to do at the time. And we messed with a couple of drummers, and then he had the idea of playing with Dave again. And I hadn't worked with Dave in a while, and things have been kind of tense between he and I when we parted ways the last time.
And we didn't talk much for a couple of years. So he called out of the blue and said he's putting a new band together. He's living in Philadelphia, and so was I, and came over and chit-chatted for quite a while, and kind of cleared the air of our differences, agreed that it was years on and time to start anew.
So we started talking about playing, and Dave was into it, and we just started practicing in his living room. He lived on South Street above the Dairy Queen.
Sorry, that's already a mess. I thought hardcore and punk rock in particular were at a low point. You know, the mid to late 90s were not exactly a high point for that kind of music.
I was living in Minneapolis, and I felt that I was living in a musical void. I mean, besides D4 and besides one or two bands there, our only exposure to the bands that I loved were touring, and they would come by once every 3 months, and I would get excited, see them, and then they would leave. And I didn't have the community that I had on the East Coast. But then Darren Walters told me he was trying out for this new band. Dan Eamon was in it, Dave Wackenschutz was in it, and I was really excited.
Amazing.
We must have practiced in your living room for like a year.
We practiced in both bedrooms.
Yeah. When I tried
One of
out,
your tries out, the futon fell off the wall and crashed you in the head.
it was I think my first or second tryout was.
Yeah, why do we used to do it in your bedroom? This time.
We did it in all 3 rooms. We practiced in all 3 rooms at one point in time. We tried singers out in the living room. Pettibone's tryout.
Oh, that's
John,
right.
who sings for him, said he was in town for the last Lifetime shows, along with a bunch of other kids that you just brought along to singer tryouts. You're like, oh, these Norwegian fellows are staying at my house for the weekend, so I don't know where they were from, but they ended up on the couch in front of the entertainment center, staring at Pettibone, screaming his lungs out through a PV-60 TNT, or like a combo bass amp. That was our PA.
I think the funniest thing was to hear all these different people's interpretations of what the vocals should sound like over the music, like before you came along. Pettibone singing like undertow, like whoa.
Didn't Darren Walters try it?
Darren Walters.
I recall that once upon a time I actually tried out for the band and was subjected to the barbs of Mr. Yeeman and Mr. Wagenshoot's, and it has left an indelible mark on my soul.
Very prepared. Lyrics. Everything is
Not surprised that
extraordinarily prepared.
they had files.
He did. He wheeled the filing cabinet up the stairs and he was extraordinarily prepared.
And then Darren sent me this cassette tape. It's called the Dan Eamon Dancers, which obviously I didn't understand at all, but popped it in, and it was, I think, 4 songs, maybe even 6 songs without any vocals, but it's just the music. And the music reminded me of late GB, even parts of Lifetime without Ari singing, and it really energized me.
Wow. We tried Thomas out from Striking and whatever, but that was in a rehearsal studio at 69th Street. What's that place called? 69th Street Studios or something?
It's in Upper Darby.
Main Street Studio, whatever it was.
Shithole.
Right out in, yeah, we tried him out there, not in the house. That's pretty funny.
I wish you had tapes.
That's why we didn't take Thomas, because I didn't want to be laying next to that hair in the van. I was like, if I wake up with one of those things in my mouth, dreaming, thinking it's a Twinkie, like, yeah. So, there you have it. Go start your own band, see what you can do.
See how that works out for you.
Yeah, see how that works. Get back to me in 2-3 years.
I've sort of misled myself into thinking that, now I'm kind of maybe a shoo-in. And so I kind of, really, it's not that I stopped trying, but I thought, well, why am I going to put all this time into something that may not pan out? Whereas Jason wrote all the lyrics to all the songs and came in like super prepared and, swept away with the vocalist position.
So after a few months of tryouts, my phone rings. It was Dave. He asked me what I was doing for the next couple of years, and that was that. I was the singer of the most hyped band in Philadelphia at that time. No pressure there. We booked our first show later that month, but it's kind of hard to book a show when your band doesn't have a name yet. One night, we sat around at a diner across the street from our practice space. After about a half an hour of jotting down names on a napkin, we came up with it. Dan had suggested Kid Dynamite, and we all agreed. After that, I went right into the studio to record my vocal tracks on the music they had recorded almost a year earlier, which ended up becoming our first demo.
I remember the first time I ever heard about them was we were in Portland, Oregon, and this kid Conrad was like, dude, you get the Kid Dynamite demo? And I'm like, what? No. Yeah. I'm like, I'm stupid when it comes to like new shit. And right away I heard the name, and I'm like, yeah, I got it. I got 10 of them. I'll mail them to you.
Then months later, he sent me the official demo with Jason singing. I loved what Jason was doing with the vocals because it was different. It wasn't just screaming. It wasn't just something off. It really worked with what Eamon and Wagon Shoots had written.
First show. Thoughts on the first show?
Well, I mean, the first show was a first show. I mean, I took a lot of pictures.
Played everything super fast.
Yeah, I tend to overcompensate for my enthusiasm. Youthful enthusiasm.
Not nerves.
No, come on. Nerves is all right there. This guy.
After, watching the video, it was like, and you're like, man, you gotta start facing the crowd.
We have often revisited that first show, and it's really funny because I sort of remember it more individually as Wagon Shoots showed up with his brand new drum box, and he was like Mr. Pro and all excited. I'm like, okay, this is your first show. And Steve was like, what the fuck, it's our first show, who kind of gives a shit. And Yeeman was like already, I always make fun of Yeeman for this. I remember him saying something like, we all got to get along, no fighting. And I'm thinking like, there's 10 of us here, dude. Who's fighting? And then Jason being scared and being like, oh, great. Essentially I remember the first grouping of people up front really being like old heads.
I remember loading, I think we might have been loading merch out of a car because we had the t-shirts, and Colin and Dave Hawes come walking up, and I don't know who was with them, but I had known them from, playing with them in previous bands. And it's just funny thinking back now, like Beavis and Butthead were like, hey guys.
Two people that eventually really become the Kid Dynamite roadies. Like, first of all, I sort of fancied myself like pseudo roadie for the band because I thought, okay, well, if I didn't make it in as singer, I always want to tag along.
Here we are, Buffalo. It is snowing. We're gonna die. Darren Walters.
Looking for my hat. I think I lost in my beard.
How do you feel about the blizzard?
I feel like I'm gonna die tonight, frankly.
And so I try to whenever possible. And the two people that really ended up being the two for real Kid Dynamite roadies were two kids that I didn't even know prior to the association with Kid Dynamite. And that would be Colin McGinnis and Dave Hawes, who are now two very close friends. But back then, I remember the band would talk about, oh, Colin brought our stuff up to the show, and I'd be like, who is this fool?
See, Colin and I have spent a lot of time playing in bands that didn't get any respect, probably because we weren't that good.
Oh, that's not problem,
but
definitely.
We meant it. We meant it.
Yeah,
however,
our hearts were in the right place.
So we had played some shows with ex-Boondecks,
Right.
one or two. Colin's whole band had. Colin knew Jason.
And I've met Jason many times in the past. We
Right.
were friends.
And you knew also Wagon Shoots, correct?
I met him through some female friends, which nothing happened, but a female,
Nothing happened.
female compadre who
I
had
had no
dinner one
implications.
night.
I had no
I met him. I met him once before. I don't know what he thought of me.
So whatever. We see the first show, and we're like, Colin said, "Hey man, these guys are pretty good." I said, "Yeah, they're really good. They're great." So everyone in Philadelphia starts going wild over Kid Dynamite. And they got all these shows on the East Coast, and neither of our bands could play even. We couldn't barely even play in our parents' basement because we were terrible.
I would only go to see him. He would only come see us.
So it worked out well for a while.
Wait, you don't remember like?
I have a real short-term memory.
What about? Oh shit! What was I gonna say? I remember like going to Kill Time and watching. Step Ahead and being like, who is this shitty fucking band?
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with Kid Dynamite.
Sure does. Wow.
Oh yeah. Fuck you, turn.
There's few places in the country that run the way Philadelphia hardcore does, in a truly independent spirit, in a truly independent sense. And I think that, you know, for a band like Kid Dynamite, it was, you look at them and you're like, this probably wouldn't happen in New York or anywhere else.
These guys are claiming Philly. None of them are actually from Philly.
Yeah.
But they're claiming Philly. Let's go to the show and see how they do outside of town. Because we were kind of new to it. We had only been in local bands. So he goes, all right, I'll come down with the truck, call them guys up, see what's going on. Well, it ended up that
we didn't even know where they were. Remember we were driving and we're like, where the hell is this space? And then we saw Wagon Shoes' car get in front of us. Like, oh, follow that guy. He knows where he's going.
Yeah, with a Jade Tree sticker.
Yeah, and
right.
we said, so we followed him, and then we pulled up, and all those dudes were pretty much, well, they weren't all there yet, but that doesn't matter. They were just
Point is, they were going to go in a car and share gear. Colin had this big truck. We loaded all the gear in the truck, and all of a sudden we were the roadies for the band.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much the way it went for like a year. We would come, tag along, Colin would bring his red truck, we'd load it in and just talk shit all night, and we became friends pretty fast with everybody in the band.
Right.
And really, I think what Kid Dynamite needed was that we gave them the keys to the city of Philadelphia. We are actually from Philly. And what we said to the rest of Philly, we said,
These guys are
all right. They're from Jersey and St. Louis, wherever the hell Wagon Shoes is from.
Well,
but
Jason,
you know what?
Jason was from like a Manioc. He was all right, but he was still kind of like floating around there.
Jason was?
Farrell, right? Not that Jason. Jason Farrell.
Yeah,
but they kicked him out because he was actually from Philly. They had to get the guy.
They said, we got these roadie guys. They're our Philly cred. So that was that.
My first Kid Dynamite story, which is my first meeting with Colin and our trip to upstate New York. And on that trip, my first interaction with Colin was with food. I think 30 minutes into the ride, we stopped at a rest stop, and I got something ridiculous like chili lime Fritos, some just obscenely disgusting junk food, and Colin just went crazy. He's like, you like all kinds of crazy food too? Oh, we're brothers. And I was also about 200 pounds at the time. So him and I were besting each other for the two biggest guys in the van. and two guys that like to eat shitty food as long as it was vegetarian.
Follow the military for 5 miles and come to Main Street as you enter Tonawanda. Mighty Taco! Yeah. It's right next to Mighty Taco. That's where Taylor said they had the vegan empanadas.
The SMD posse.
Yo, this is a fucking van, man. What do you think I'm fuck the van up? Damn. Pay good money for this shit.
Oh, you guys aren't allowed to park here. You have to move.
You don't like living much, do you? Wait. And they're really regretful. I am regretful that we put out that record.
I'm regretful.
Going to tour Cuba where there's fucking communist bullshit.
Shut up.
Really, would you like to take that up with Victor? Think that's funny?
What? I would tour Cuba.
Are you fucking out of your mind? You better. You got.
Put them socks on. Look at that shit.
Don't you get a paycheck? Oh my lord.
Look, man. Little skinny, get up. Say it.
Oh. I seem to have the difficult shoes. Can't seem to. I guess I still gotta pee.
We all got difficult shoes, man.
I can't seem to master this. Get in, get out. Who's driving?
Who's taking over?
They don't let me, so I'm not even gonna offer.
You want me to drive for a while? I'll drive. You don't trust me? What's that?
I'm just saying, whoever wants keys.
I was waiting for someone else to volunteer since you and me are the only ones who drove, but...
No, I'll be more than happy to drive.
I didn't think you wanted other people to volunteer.
No, I'll drive. It's good. I'll get a real cup of coffee.
Who's driving?
I'll get a real cup of coffee and drive.
I know that you said you wanted to sleep, and then you just sat back there japping away the whole time.
Well, how long do I actually get to spend?
What does that mean, japping away?
Did you say japping?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Japping?
I'm offended by that.
What, a Jujo?
We stayed at a house in Ithaca, I believe, where I think that Colin traded a flash from some girl for him flashing his big ass.
No, he's crazy Swedish. This is crazy Swedish girl, and she couldn't really, like, she spoke English, it was broken, and she had this camera, and she was, and then they were playing fucking Slayer in the bed, dude. There were, like, people having sex in the room downstairs and going crazy, and all you heard was, blood, and you're trying to get some sleep. It was the greatest night of all nights. I just remember, like, mooning the camera, or they would turn around, like, give everyone a big moon, and they would turn around and go, show us some more.
There was all kind of tomfoolery and foolishness going on at this house. And I know that was primarily Colin and I do recall Jason being there. Wagon Shoes was probably already in bed.
What the fuck? What is wrong? Oh, I gotta hear this. Why is he laughing so hard? Why is he laughing so hard? What the fuck is wrong?
What happened?
Oh my god, dude. See, I wore tight shirts back then. That was hard, dude. I'm a trendsetter, dog. Those guys, man, I set the trends up, and then everyone else knocks them down, so I gotta start over again. You know what I mean? Each size is too small. I just ripped that shirt in half today.
With like a Calvin drawing on it. Yeah,
Hey, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, from the beginning, and then obviously as the band progressed, I think it's just a matter of being comfortable and confidence. You know, when a band's starting out, their songs are going to sound a certain way, and they're going to dress a certain way, and then as they grow, I think they have, sort of more perspective because they're experimenting more, and there's more trial and error as far as the songwriting process, or, you have more perspective of, certain things like your stage presence or what have you. So I think that just kind of comes inevitably, subconsciously, not that it's about, conforming to a mold or, being dressed up like puppets. So I think the band evolved in both senses in a very natural and organic way,
In case you were wondering, this is every bit as fun as it looks. I hope you guys are having fun too. The only real difference between us, we're equal participants in this shit. The only real difference is that I'm a few feet taller than you, and you can see up my nose. But other than that, we're all doing the same thing. So you can come up here, maybe we'll come down there.
I am up here, and 3 feet smaller than him. I can always see up his nose. Isn't it pretty sight?
Someone in the band thinking play Magic Flute.
These songs have mad dance parts, so don't let them go to waste.
Yeah, they're angry dance parts, so look out.
Praise God!
Antidote this mental miasma, and thus invigorate and sustain existence.
Things really started to take off for us that summer. We were practicing 3 times a week and playing as many shows as we could, every weekend. It was like Dan, Dave, and Steve had been shot out of a catapult after over a year of playing without a singer. Things were getting excited. In the fall of 1998, we entered Track C Studios with producer Steve Evans.
Might want to get this on film. Okay. What we're gonna do, over here, and over here, take all the CDs out, just stack them up like somewhere hidden, just to fuck with Steve. See if he notices. Let me go get a drink, and then I'll be back.
Steve Evans.
Hard at work getting my Mortal Kombat codes.
Hey! What's going on? Not a whole lot. I'm hoping we'll get added for this someday.
Awesome.
My man here, a little secret dose of beef. In his little dirt dumpster.
Oh, stop it.
I love it.
What are you talking about? Like, oh,
What the fuck I'm doing?
Are you doing your lines again?
Rolling doobies.
Rolling some doobage. Just waiting for fucking
Doobies, buddy.
Hey guys, just documenting this fine moment in musical history. Look at that Medusa-like mess.
Dan, this is for your benefit. Note the well-placed go.
Well, we certainly know mixing will go much smoother from this point on.
Two weeks later, we had our first album. 2 weeks after that, it was on the shelves, and we hit the ground running.
We had a lot of nightmares with the. You know what's funny about both Kid Dynamite proper records, like full lengths, I guess. Two funny things. Number one, both of them were done so fast it's not even funny. I think you guys I think Kid Dynamite recorded this record and probably it was out like a month and a half later. And Wagon Shoots, I recall because Jade Tree was still in the house where Tim and I lived, and Wagon Shoots was endlessly berating Tim about the layout and the song that didn't make it onto this record. And I remember that there was a big fuss because, God forbid, the grainy picture that appears underneath it that says Kid Dynamite written in concrete. Dave essentially said, look, this is my wife's photo. If it doesn't look good, it's not going on the layout, and screw you guys. The first record was really like, here they are, this is it. It just came right out of the gate and was sort of like a realization of like, hey, this band has been practicing for damn near 2 years. They finally had a show, they finally recorded a record, and here it is. Kid Dynamite brought back that music in a very special way. Both the intensity and the spirit and the heart of the band were there. And plus the fact that I think, well, not quite, but both Dan and Dave were approaching their 30s. So it was nice to have a band that sort of brought me back to being a teenager, but also the people in the band were, or some of the people in the band were a bit older. So you knew that it wasn't just a simple rehash. It was like a spirit of something that had been with the members for many years.
And you know, when there's a lot of hype around something, it never lives up to the hype, and that one really did. I remember when the first time that I heard of Kid Dynamite, it was ex-Lifetime guys, and I was playing in a band called Creep Division, and they were on the bill, and they went on so early that night that no one really got a chance to see them except a few people, and the few people that did were saying they were amazing, and the hype just built and built and built. And when that album came out, it lived up to it.
Kid Dynamite was something that kids were hoping to have after the crumbling of all these bands from that era. And I think that Kid Dynamite really bridged what our generation listened to and what the generation now listens to.
They equal more than the sum of their parts. You know, you put them together, it's more than the individuals. It's, I don't know, it's some sort of a spark that you don't see often.
It's chemistry and timing too. There's a certain time where just, you know, we needed a band like that, and it was there, and it was all the members together. Then you take them and put two of them in another band together. It'll be good, but it won't be the same thing as Kid Dynamite.
Let's face it, there's the obvious things. The obvious things of, you know, Dan coming from Lifetime and Dan and Dave coming from Lifetime, and you just have rabid Lifetime fans who are just psyched as all hell to see what they were going to do next, you know. And, you know, their sound was really accessible. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, as accessible as hardcore punk can be. I mean, I know in setting up the band, one of the things that Dan wanted was someone who had that hardcore punk voice, but could also sing. Kid Dynamite definitely had that melodic sensibility and accessibility, but I don't know, you know, it just things were right for them. I mean, not many bands have their demo release show at the Trocadero, you know. I mean, so there was definitely, I think initially there was that thing of they got the shows because they were, as a band, they were all people who had paid their dues in the past. People knew their past bands. So they, you know, let's face it, they weren't starting at the same point as a band, just starting in your basement. They kind of started at a little bit of a higher level just because of bands that they'd been in, which, you know, only got you so far. So that got them a good shows to begin with. But the quality of their music is what kept them up there. So a lot of people, you know, are like, oh, well, Kid Dynamite, they started off, you know, at a higher level. But granted, they started off at a higher level, but I'm sure they had to work just as hard, and I'm sure that if their music didn't back it up, no one would have cared after a month and a half.
Things did start to change for us that winter. We were still playing shows almost every weekend. The big difference was, that fall and winter took its toll on us. Steve was distancing himself from the band. Personal relationships just weren't at their peak anymore, and we all decided, Steve included, that we would move on without him. It was hard for us to tour the US that year. I was in school full-time, Dave was working full-time, Dan was also working, but on top of that was finishing up his doctorate. We still wanted to play as many shows as possible, so we needed to fill the bass position rather quickly. Our friend Ernie from Gray Area filled in for a few shows.
They had a goal, at least it appeared to me that they had a goal that they were going to be the tightest, hardest, fastest hardcore band, hands down, and without competition, and that was their goal. I remember practicing with them, and that was the goal. How tight can this be? How many notes are in that one little piece? Let's count that one little half a second. How many notes are in there? You know, it doesn't matter about anything other than tight, fast, go, as hard as possible, military. That's the way it felt.
Yeah, it must have been the first time I met you. Like, first time we played like the DC area headlining, right? At the place in College Park.
St. Andrews.
Oh yeah.
With Ernie
That's
on
when I
it.
met you guys.
This show was nuts.
Yeah,
That
show your
show
idols.
was. I was hanging from the PA watching Ernie.
There's
trying to
photos
figure
of
out
it.
Yeah. So I could learn the bass parts I didn't know.
And I was very nervous. I don't think there's a video of me playing that show, and I don't think I moved once the entire time. I definitely just stood still, but it was awesome. Playing with those guys was so much fun. And I remember that Jason at one point got down on his knees like it was a marriage proposal and asked me to join the band. And I said I do, so that sealed the deal. I was in.
So a couple months ago, we were looking for a bass player, and we started trying out a lot of people. And I'd like to introduce you guys to Michael. He tried out a couple times, and now we're going to take the time to ask him, would you be part of our band for the next couple of years? Yes or no? Wait, hold on. Will you marry us? I want to send this song out to him because he drove 2 hours to practice with us a couple times just so we could play this show. So you should all thank him too if you're having a good time. Here, first aspect PhD control.
Now Michael was our full-time bass player. We had no more excuses. Before we knew it, June came around. School was over, Dan had finished his doctorate, Dave and Michael had both put in for their vacation time, which was all summer. We started our first US tour that June in upstate New York, headed east and met up with In My Eyes and Good Riddance.
More so for them.
Didn't we have a show get shut down there? We never played it?
Yeah.
The Good Riddance
Yeah,
tour.
Good Riddance tour.
Oh no, they didn't play that time.
They were off the tour by then.
The club closed and neglected to tell the bands or the booking agent or...
We show up and they changed the locks on Coney Island High. Like there was hundreds of kids we were there till the sun went down. And it,
All the fire trucks showed up.
Yeah, all the fire trucks showed up because it was just mayhem in the streets. It was kids
I think
everywhere.
the club owner called the fire trucks.
Yeah.
To disperse the crowd.
There was like a level of uncertainty.
All of our throng, the fans, were, the
Yeah.
scene had to be dispersed.
There were people around the line around the corner. My recollection was that was the club owner's cowardice. Like he didn't want to come down and like deal with it and tell us that there was no show and that he closed down. So he just called the fire department.
We ate a lot of good food that day, I'm sure.
We played shows with them down the east coast of Florida, then headed west through the southern states and Texas. Before we knew it, we were in Los Angeles at the Palace Theater finishing our leg with Good Riddance. The very next day, we met up in San Diego with Kill Your Idols, toured back up the California coast, then started heading east. Then on July 25th of that summer, I spent my 23rd birthday in Omaha, Nebraska, with Kill Your Idols and about 10 kids that showed up to the show. There wasn't much time to party, because the very next day we had to meet up with Face to Face and Alkaline Trio in Chicago. We played a week's worth of shows with them, then had a day off.
The live show, 25 minutes, done, goodbye. The best shit you'll ever see. I seen them at Irving Plaza with Face to Face, and they were forced into like a 45-minute set or something. And you know what I mean? It was a big difference than just getting it, you know what I mean? Like boom, and then like, wow, this is a long set, and I heard Jason's voice, like that's hard, man. That's, it's hard to keep up for that long. And plus, who really wants to see a band any more than 20 to 25 minutes? Unless it's Maiden or Slayer. Who do you want to see more than that?
Then we met up with Kill Your Idols again in Columbus, Ohio, where we toured some of the Midwest. Then it was up to Canada, where we headed east. Then another week's worth of shows, we ended up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we ended that summer tour. That summer, Kid Dynamite became a machine.
Thanks a lot.
But so anyway, they built up all this momentum, and we got really tight with them. And Colin, because he had the truck, he got the first tour. I don't know. I really wanted to take the first tour.
He could have had it after I went.
That's right, because here we get into a good story. Colin, I'm gonna go on the first tour. Man, I've done all the work. I got the red truck. I said, all right. We're both working together at the time for Colin's cousin, who Colin still works for. But so Colin goes on the first summer tour. It's like 13 weeks long. He was like, I
think we should try to make the maximum amount of money we can on this summer tour.
It was a well-oiled corporate machine.
Yeah,
Kids had a well-oiled corporate machine. It was a...
See, I don't think of it that way. I think of it as an abusive family. You have an abusive dad who would be wagon shoots.
Right.
And then you have like a pushover mom who allows himself to get abused, which would be
Geeman. Of course.
And then you have the two rebellious kids who are trying to get their way. You know, like Spider, like Farrell. He didn't get his way; he got kicked out. But
he got his way.
Jason wanted to get his way. You know, he's making the song great. You know, like Jason wrote some great hooks, fantastic. And Spider's just a cool dude. You know. Well, that situation can't last very long. So inevitably.
I'll tell you what didn't last very long was me on tour. That's
so
Kid Dynamite had to borrow my car to make the DC show, and maybe even one or two other shows, because it ended up that those two stayed at my house and spent 4th of July with me, and Colin was enamored with me because I had all these old hardcore videos and like 2 boxes of 48 popsicles, and he was like, ooh, popsicles all day. And we just sat there in the heat and eating popsicles, watching videos, and we had a good old time.
So Colin goes, I'm going to go on the tour. I can't wait. It's going to be good. We're going to eat. We're going to have a good time. Go out with good riddance.
I worked my entire life to do this. My life's blood.
He's probably going to be like, oh, I had such a great time. Yet I remember him in my hallway like, Hawes, I can't do this anymore. You got to go. Take the heat off me.
We were in Texas. And when Colin's job at the end of the night was to take the money and, you know, from the merch and keep it nice and tidy. And Dave had taken it from him when he wasn't looking. And
I happened to walk by the table, I think, and it was sitting on the table, but he had his back turned to the table and he was sorting through his free zines that he just traded for some t-shirts. So I walked by, just picked it up, walked out to the van, put it in. It's like, I'll see how this plays out.
A bunch of times during the night where you're like, Colin, what's wrong? You look kind of peaked.
So he gets 4 weeks into the tour. They spin back on the East Coast. I take off him. Hey, can you take over for me? I said, I don't know. Maybe I got other shit going on. Well, I showed up in New York when they get back on the East Coast, and I came up with Colin's now wife. It was then his girlfriend. We walked into Irving Plaza, And Colin's standing there at the merch table with the money and a couple shirts. And he goes, okay, guys, I'm out of here. Hawes is here. He puts the money down. He puts the shirts down. He grabs Heather, and they leave. I don't even think they stayed for the show. So Kid Dynamite was thinking I was going to take over because Colin's like, you won't take over. I never agreed to it. So here they are, roadie-less for the last 2 weeks. Well, that really was the end of Colin's reign as the top dog.
Well, which, to be honest, I'm very thankful because that sucked. The only thing I remember about being on tour were rules. All you got were rules. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do it. Don't touch the radio. Don't fall asleep driving. Don't sit in shotgun and fart. You couldn't do anything. Don't call the titty shirt. Don't call the girl shirt. You know what I mean? I was hungry. I wanted just some dinner once in a while. Brothers walk in with food, have food, and not even offer me a plate. You must be here while the doors are open.
It's true.
Yeah. It's all fun and games till somebody quits. You know what I mean? I'm not going to finish the tour.
That was cowardly. He just left.
He didn't tell us though, did he? Oh no, he did.
He said that Dave's going to take over, and then he left to have the show, and then Dave was like, "But I can't." Yeah. It's all right.
I remember a time when guys came out, everyone got out of the van, me and Jason are in the van, I forget what city it is, but they all got out. And him and I were sitting there reading something. He was reading Get in the Van, or I was reading Get in the Van. He was reading some other book, and this wasp came flying in the van, little brown wasp, and we both lost our minds, dude. We were screaming like little girls. We had, Get in the Van. I don't know if he even has it sitting here, but it's this.
Yeah, I actually do. It's on my coffee table.
It's this big. The book is this big. You know what I mean? And me and Jay, I might have had the paper or the book. I forget. But we're both swinging like we're in this van, and the van's only in this space. But we're swinging. We're like, get the wasp! And Jay's like, I'm allergic. And we're swinging at it. And not only did we not kill the wasp, it kind of looked at us and flew out the window. But we both looked at each other.
That's really an anticlimactic story.
It sucked.
2 weeks later, we found ourselves in the studio recording Shorter, Faster, Louder, our second LP for Jade Tree. 2 weeks after that, we were back on the road for a month with Snapcase and Buried Alive. It was then that I started to distance myself from the band, no longer being able to control anything. We just kept moving and moving and moving, and it really started to take its toll on me. Don't get me wrong, I still had my fun, but it just didn't feel the same anymore.
Dave Hawes had been attacking me with a feather duster, which I'll leave to your imagination.
I was on the next tour. They only did 2 full U.S. tours. I was on the second tour, the fall tour.
We were at truck stops. We were buying stuff at truck stops that was like absurd. And he bought the tire bunny, which is a weapon ostensibly used by truck drivers to like tap their tires with to see if they're full enough, you know. And it's like a bobby, like a what do you call this thing? It's a billy club. with a band of metal at the top, and he put like Kid Dynamite stickers all over it, and he spelled out like straight edge is stupid with like chopped up Kid Dynamite stickers, and he used to carry it around, have it at the merch table, you know, Mr.
He'd
like,
say the Slayer line is here to all the other bands, to Snapcase and Buried Alive. He'd say, this is the Slayer line. It's
What does that
here.
mean?
I guess he meant it's metal here,
Oh.
it's punk here. It's the Slayer line.
And he also bought a feather duster, and
he bought a feather duster. I don't know why.
because it was as ridiculous as buying a billy club at a truck stop. He's like, oh, I got feather dusters, billy
He
clubs.
said he wanted to keep the merch clean.
To be dusting it every night.
Yeah.
French maid outfit.
I think he actually dusted it a few times.
And then he dusted it.
Yeah, and then he dusted into it.
Yeah.
Well, the feather duster allegedly, what we claimed was that I had taken care of some of my manly business into a feather duster, and
At the time, it wasn't very manly. It was probably boyish.
well, at any rate, there was supposed to be some material in this feather duster that was highly questionable. So, and then the feather duster just started showing up in Darren's bag and in his shoe, and
Because it takes about 10 minutes to figure out that Darren's really uptight. He's like, oh, you dirty people. He's in a van with like 6 dirty dudes for a month, and he's like, I'm gonna get germs. And so Haas was like, oh yeah, I masturbated into the feather duster. and then Darren was just overcome with disgust. He went on for half an hour like, you people are filthy, and this, I'd never, and then he like went to the bathroom and washed his hands for 30 minutes.
we made up a story, and we used this prop to really push him over the edge. Not that he really needed much pushing, but
Yeah, he was freaked out. So of course we, like next city we got to, I believe it was LA, and we unzipped his bag and put the feather duster in his bag. He
lost his mind.
Nuts. I think he cried.
He went berserk.
He turned
I won't attest to that, but he definitely went berserk.
I still have that feather duster though, because I'm planning on dropping it in the mail and having it show up to Darren. Like maybe as a wedding gift. I'll give it to him.
Darren will
Finally
have a
get
nice
married.
wedding gift.
One day, him and I are sitting in the loft, and Wagon Shoots is asleep up there with us. And Dave is just, kind of picking his nose and doing this, throwing it under the loft. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man? You're picking your fucking nose. That's disgusting.
I maybe relieved my nose of one booger and dropped it off the loft because, I didn't want to put it up in where people slept.
Next thing I know, I get the Wagon Shoots. He's like the Moby Dick, he's got the eye. Like all of a sudden, Wagon Shoots goes, and he looks up. Now Wagon Shoots is interested, and Wagon Shoots goes, Hawes, what are you doing? Hawes is like, what do you mean? I said, he's picking his fucking nose and throwing it under the loft.
It wasn't like I was picking my nose and throwing it in the loft. I mean, into the equipment area. It's not true. Well, Darren.
I was.
Darren, the shit talker that he is, tells Wagon Shoots or needles him, hey, look what Hawes is doing. Because he loved to just get Wagon Shoots riled up and, turn the crank on his back and let him go.
So Wagon Shoots, now he's awake. And he's like, so, let's see, you're picking your fucking nose and putting it on the loft where I gotta climb every fucking night to get my drums. You think that's fucking funny? And Haas was like, no, I got snot, I'm just picking my nose, man.
And I probably was like this, dropping it underneath the loft, which is disgusting. I'm a little embarrassed to even say the story. Wagon Shoots, of course, the abusive father that he was. Are you dropping a booger down in underneath the loft where I do my daily business? I was like, what daily business do you do underneath the loft? I unload that truck every day. I pull out my drums.
Of course, surprise, surprise, Wagon Shoots goes absolutely apeshit on Haas, which I found very amusing. Pretty much, Wagon Shoots used to go off a lot in those days, and as long as you weren't the person that were on the receiving end of that, it was always great to watch.
But he really gave me hell, and I just kind of laughed because I thought it was funny because I knew what Darren was doing, but I wasn't really throwing a lot of boogers down there or anything. It's these stories, they just blow up into these wild tales.
Just one.
I think he went off on Haas.
That's my specialty.
Wait, was that when I remember once I was driving the van and Haas was sitting shotgun, and I don't know if this was the same time or if this was just for a joke, but you climbed down on Haas, I think completely nude. Or pulled.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
Was that for putting boogers under the?
It might have just been for kicks. Just woke up with a 3-hour pee boner and needed someone to share the experience with. I don't know, you know?
It's a rock. The song's called Pause.
Wagon Shoots would love to wrestle in the nude in the van. Again, it was
Very homoerotic.
I didn't get it, but that's their thing. So I would sit up front with Jason and we listened to good music, because Spider would only ever listen to X-Ray Specs.
Oh God, I remember waking up every morning, Unit's tape,
X-Ray Specs, and all this crappy ass DC shit. Music. Him and Spider would get up there, or the Jackson 5. He'd play that. Spider would play the Jackson 5.
I didn't hear.
He played it for about
5.
7 weeks.
I didn't hear it. I only heard
Oh
X-Ray
my
Specs.
God. So anyway,
blow my brains out.
That's one of the stories that I only remember because Haas has retold it. And
Yeah, see, he twists that story. Haas twists that story like a frickin' pretzel knot.
What story?
The puke story. I've heard it 100 different ways.
And the ad said something else, and then Wagon Shoots elbowed him, and
then it's
glass
eye. Yeah, exactly. Glass eye shot.
Dave Hawes, Dave Wagon Shoots, Spider, and I were all in the loft. God forbid, that's 4 people up there.
We're up there. Jason and I are riding through the desert. We're having a wonderful time listening to the Boss, of course. But anyway, we're listening to the Boss. They're up there wrestling in the nude.
And some sort of rolling around, fucking around, doing something. Probably Wagon Shoots with his pants off or something.
And Spider ate some rancid Doritos or something. I don't remember. But Spider's up there. Guys.
I was sick. You guys were wrestling.
This is boring.
Someone crashed into me. Someone's elbow landed squarely in my stomach and...
Walters and I were wrestling? Do we have clothes on?
I think you guys were wrestling.
Me and this guy?
I don't remember.
We were
if
probably
clothes on.
naked.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Hopefully.
Possibly.
Sort of at the same time, Spider is yelling like, I'm gonna puke, or maybe it wasn't along those lines, but it was evident Spider was gonna blow.
Could you not do, guys? And they're rumbling around. Darren's back there laughing. oh guys, I ate some rancid Doritos. Please don't elbow me in the stomach. And all of a sudden, Wagon Shoots whips around with an elbow to his stomach, and you hear him, and I was like, shh. I look back, and Jason's like, he's driving. He looks over, and we're like, this guy's gonna vomit on us. So I was like, Spider! I started screaming, Spider, don't vomit! Hold it in! And he goes, he's like trying to hold it in, he's leaned over. And I saw a little piece of vomit on the top of the van.
I roll up and face up on the, what am I trying to say? I'm looking up at the top of the van from the loft, and I see some substance sort of starting to drip down. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
I said, oh my God, here it comes. We're gonna get hit with the vomit. So I keep, where is it, Spider? Where's the vomit? And finally he goes, I swallowed it. So we were just like, oh, gross, dude, gross.
I knew that if I actually puked in the van, that the smell would never go away. And also,
so you just kept your mouth.
I just
might have improved it.
Well, I might have. But someone's clothes were like right in front of me. I think it was Darren's bag and clothes. So it was like,
oh, Darren's accoutrements, his bags.
I'll tell you what though,
camping gear.
Yeah, in retrospect,
and all that.
I should have just let it fly.
Song's called Showoff.
This one's a cover. Kind of ambitious, but what the fuck. If you are familiar with it, come up and sing it with us. You can come up on stage if you want to. Feel free. It's called Rise Above.
Right,
This was the last show on that tour. We were invited to play that following Sunday on Tommy Conwell's Loud and Local on Philly's local rock station. The next week, I quit the band.
They went, like, their touring span was sort of short, like the lifespan of their touring, like, but it was like 8 months straight. Like, they were like, okay, cool, we're on tour, and it was like done. They did a Good Riddance tour with us, that face-to-face, like, they just, they weren't home.
What ended the band was probably, I think, touring, constant touring. I don't know for a fact, I have no idea, but just from knowing them, I saw a change. Probably, what's the words? Like stressed to get out another record and then get back on the road and stuff. You know what I mean? It seemed like the fun went down. You know what I mean? Like it was fun, the energy was there. Then it became more of a business. You know, like, okay, we have to do this and this and this. You know, it's strategic. Like, you know, and that'll kill any band.
You know, that's one of the beautiful things about punk rock is that people take it personally and people care about it. It's not just, you know, for hardcore kids, for punk kids who really care, it's not just, oh, another band. It's, I mean, for a lot of people, it's, you know, there's a reason why people travel hundreds of miles, sometimes thousands of miles to see a band. There's a reason why people are so obsessive about records and fanzines and things like that, because people give a shit. And I think it was just a blow to a lot of people. Like, I mean, but on the other hand, how can you fault somebody who's just there? You know, the whole essence of hardcore punk is doing something because it feels right, and doing something because you believe in it, because it feels like the right thing to do, and because you're feeling passionate about it. And the last thing I would want as a fan of a band is for a band to keep going when a member is not feeling passionate about it.
It was a short little band that really came through the city and through my life like a lightning bolt. You know, that lightning bolt is definitely kind of symbolic. It just really galvanized the city, and it got a lot of people playing music and involved in this cool community that's still going.
They broke up too early. Sup? Are we what?
Tito Jackson.
They broke up too soon, and God knows what could have happened. But they were on their way. They were great.
All the best bands in hardcore had the most personal conflict between the band members, Bad Brains, Cro-Mags.
That's true.
I guess it works the best that way. It comes out the best in the music and the live performance when there's a little bit of tension between members.
I never looked at it that way. That's kind of true.
Yeah.
That's right.
Played our last shows and moved on. A few years had gone by and I hadn't really spoken to the guys much. Whenever we would see each other, it would be pretty awkward. I lived upstairs from Dave and we really had nothing to say to each other. Then one day we got a call from Mark Beamer. Things changed from that point on.
Approached the band, I would say 3 years after they broke up, and asked if they would do a reunion show for as a benefit for my foundation. And after a couple of conversations, they said yes without much hesitation. Initially, when they said yes, I was like, okay, awesome. I'll get to see a band that I fell in love with, and I felt that needed to finish something. I'll get to see them again. 200, 300 kids will show up. We'll raise $2,000, which would have been phenomenal for me.
Let's shoot for a half hour and see what we get.
How do you want to go about that?
Well, what are we not going to play on this record?
You want to just sit down with the fucking records for a second? Just like sit on the floor?
That probably makes better sense.
I'll get a pen.
Got good bass. You like it because it's got bass solo. It's bass solo. Yeah, I caught you.
No, I know.
That shit was weak.
If anybody gets cold, just...
So take off all your clothes.
Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh.
What happened?
Sweet Shop?
How's
I
that
don't
go?
remember that one at all. Is it like...
How would we start that? How do you count that?
How did it start? I think it went Becca, counted it.
Not on the record.
No?
No.
That's the one that starts...
Not you. Put it down. Oh, we've been asked to... You guys want to play a unannounced warm-up house show? Just to play live before we actually play these shows? Over at Andy and Brandon's? They want to sit on invitations and have like a dinner party and have just us play.
Took you long enough.
Oh man, it's the pigs. Pigs are good.
All right, well. That was fun.
No, that's all right. Things started to snowball. The tickets went on sale unannounced on a Wednesday night, and it was Tuesday night, and by Wednesday morning they were gone, just by word of mouth. And I think there were a couple hundred left at Space Boy, and I got photographs of the line at Space Boy. I mean, kids were driving down from Boston to get in line at 6 a.m. just to get the last 100 tickets for this Kid Dynamite reunion show.
This song is called Heart Attack.
we raised over $20,000 in 3 days with just a band, a defunct band that kids loved so much. They were willing to shell out over $20,000 to see them support what they were supporting and relive something that a lot of them lived when they were younger, or a lot of kids there had never seen Kid Dynamite.
Tim Owen, by the way, left to bleach his hair and get my copy of the Four Walls Falling 7-inch. He'll be back in a second.
This song's called Living Daylights. Hold on. Checking the tune. Okay, I think we're ready. All systems go.
To be honest with you, I thought that the reunion was a great cause, and I was glad to be a part of it because Beamer's my friend, and because the cause is a noble one to raise awareness for cancer. But the actual Kid Dynamite show that happened, I didn't really see much of it because I just felt like that Kid Dynamite's time was it was really fun, and it was like a special time because it was kind of like a right place, right. What is it? What's the story? Right.
Being at the right place.
Being at the right place at the right time, and being the right band, and it was really exciting because people just really took to what they were doing, and it was exponential the way that the band grew. And so when the last shows came, that to me was the end of Kid Dynamite. That was like, it was amazing. Everybody came out, everybody flew out.
Yeah,
And the church was packed, and it was just wild. And I think that the reunions were great, but to me, it just didn't seem like the same thing. And I know this sounds like the typical roadie perspective, like the reunion wasn't as good as the original, but it wasn't not as good. I mean, they were great, and they were really tight, but it wasn't as just wasn't the same because I was like so entrenched in what was going on at the time.
I mean, I can understand if they were all a bunch of drunks and they weren't doing anything else with their lives and they're doing a reunion show just to be able to pay their bills, and all of a sudden it seems cheap. But they were doing it because there was a lot of people want to see Kid Dynamite, and it was a very good cause that they did it for. I see absolutely no reason why that should be ruining any legacy.
You know, like if you weren't there, you weren't there. Don't give them another chance, you know, like some bands, you know what I mean, that are coming back, and then it's like, oh, you know what I mean, to give everyone a chance to, oh, okay, you know, whatever.
In some weird ways, it kind of brought a lot of people back together that weren't necessarily like the cause is great. I like Mark, I love Mark, whatever, who cares? But that's not the part that kind of got me. The part that got me was like, wow, look at all these guys that we all had fun with before, we're all having fun again. No one
which kind of helped the idea that we're all playing shows again together. We're all in bands again. Like, it kind of reinvigorated all our love for each other as well as the band. You know what I mean?
When they did the reunion, it really enabled the band closure, because the way that Kid Dynamite stopped was really abrupt. I think that it enabled them to get back together, squash hard feelings, and finish something that the four of them really continued on a journey with. They didn't start the journey together because of the replacing the bass players and so forth, but it was a journey that they needed to end.
It was good to see everybody back together, and no one was talking shit on each other, like actual angry shit, not fun stuff.
Yeah, like everything. That's true. Like all the animosity was.
Yeah, it kind of dissipated. That was a good thing.
It was great.
And like I said, I mean, everyone has mentioned it today anyway, that, you know, we're back as a kind of a community, where, you know, we're all friends still. I mean, so that's probably the main part to me.
What made the band tick and why the people that were involved got involved. And, you know, it wasn't about money and it wasn't about record sales. It was just about the music and friends and people coming together just because of being drawn in by the music.
Important to myself, both, again, as somebody who tried out for the band, put out the band's records, did some time on the road with the band. I mean, that's it's a very special time period, a very special experience. Tim and I have had the luck of putting out a lot of great bands' records over the years. But when it comes to Kid Dynamite was the first band where we had already dealt with some of the members and we had a really good relationship. They were our friends, you know, they were the people we went and saw movies with, they were people we went to shows with, and they were our peers. So to see our peers start a band that became pretty damn successful and live out their entire career with Jade Tree and see the good, the bad, the ugly along the way to the reunions and the final shows and DVDs and B-sides has been extremely important.
The most important thing to me as an outsider, well, not as an outsider, but as a guy who wasn't in the band but still was a part of that community, is that it still is a community.
They helped really establish my foundation to become what it has grown into now. Initially, when I first started the foundation, I thought, you know, I'll raise a little bit of money so we can remember the name of Sir Savio, and it has ballooned into a full-time job for me. and something that has affected thousands of people all over the country. So I really see Kid Dynamite as launching that part of the foundation.
And that's cool. You can't
beat that. That's
beat that, especially for a band that was only together for what, a year and a half or 2 years or something. Maybe it was 3 years, but
If there was an easy way to punctuate this story, I would. But the fact is, there is no easy epilogue. Just recently, we wrapped up our 4th reunion show at CBGB's. We're still friends, we still talk to each other, we still respect one another. In many ways, the band really never broke up. We spent a lot of time together. We overcame a lot of petty bullshit. We've seen growth in one another, and that I'm very proud of. Who knows what's gonna happen? I'll let the punctuation take care of itself.